Welcome to the Wednesday, October 22nd, 2025 Garrison Board of Education regular business meeting. Dan is away, so I have the pleasure of filling in for him. I was told there's a competition to make this shorter than the meetings he runs, so I'm really excited about that. All right, go ahead, call the roll please, Dusty.
Jocelyn Apostello. Here. Eric Arnold.
Here.
Jennifer Harrington-Wilson. Here. Dan Jasnow.
Excused.
Peter Lesser.
Here.
Ken Schott.
Here.
Sarah Torme.
Here. Pledge allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Up next, we have accept agenda changes. Do I have any recommended changes to this evening's agenda? No. You good, Peter? All right, awesome. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby accept the agenda as presented. May I have a motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays?
Aye.
Thank you, Peter. Nays? Abstentions? All right, that brings us to the superintendent's report. Go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Stoll.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody, members of the board, community members that are actually in the audience, and those that are out in virtual land. I'm going to be brief with my remarks this evening because I want to give ample time for us to do our annual data presentation. So a couple things. One is we're super excited about our Green Team superheroes. I don't know if you've heard, but we have a biodigester by the name of Seymour. We've aptly named him or her. We have about 40 students that have volunteered to be part of our Green Team. Our Green Team is responsible to assist all lunch periods in the sorting of food waste to ensure that Seymour gets a healthy diet of compostable materials. I'm happy to report that our students have done a remarkable job, and Seymour is happy and healthy and digesting all the food scraps from our new lunch program. And I do want to talk about our students. To have 40 students, I will admit some have dropped off because scraping food trays and helping young ones sort food isn't always the most fun activity. But we still have a lot of students who are really excited to do this, and that's really a testament to their sense of service, their sense of environmental responsibility. So we've done something really well here by instilling that sense of service and environmental stewardship in our students. And I do want to thank Mr. McDonald and Ms. Bucola, our environmental education. They really spearheaded this effort. We wanted to make sure that this was also a learning experience for our students, so they do study the science and composting and aerobic digestion is what this machine does. So we're really excited. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Krista, for your efforts in this. We look forward to whatever's next for the Green Team. I do want to mention, and I know Peter's here, so thank you, and certainly if there's board comments, we can talk about it, or Peter, if you want to jump in, I just want to let the community know that our Outdoor Immersive Classroom Committee had its first meeting this month. It's made up of members from our Board of Education, parents and guardians, as well as staff and administration from the school, and it's led by our architects at CPL. And really just, we don't have much to report other than we did a lot of fact finding and understanding the site and things of that nature, but our goal is to provide the Board of Education with several design ideas, costs associated with those designs for the February 11th meeting for consideration if we're going to move forward in this project and whether or not to have it as part of our budget. Peter, I know you've been, and thank you, Peter, for really leading this charge on behalf of the district. I don't know if I missed anything or you want to add anything.
No, just a thank you to the parents who came, and I think it was a good first meeting, and I'm just really excited about all the ideas that were shared, and I think we'll have a lot to report in the coming weeks.
Great, thank you. Lastly, before our next meeting, I think our modified Sports are going to come to a close, and I just want to give the community an update. We're really proud. We're actually having a very successful modified sports season. Our football team has a record of 1-1-1. If you've ever seen an 8-on-8 football, modified football, it's definitely a unique treat. I can see why there's the tie there. It's really more, I would think, instructional than it is anything else. The boys soccer are off to an incredible 6-2 record. They started 0-2 and they won 6 straight. I actually watched their game yesterday. They're amazing. Look out in the next couple of years in our high school for our boys soccer players. Our girls are also amazing. They have a 4-1 record. They have 4 games remaining. I think they were supposed to have one today and the other school canceled, so we were really, and the girls were really disappointed about that. And one of our athletes is in the crowd, and I know she was disappointed not to be able to play today. But our cross country also doing remarkably well. Many of our athletes have placed in top 10 in the meets, and we have 2 meets remaining. Our official start date of winter season is November 17th. I want to thank all our parents for coming to the games, supporting our students, Mr. Beckley for arranging all of this, Mr. Jimmick and his transportation team for making sure the shuttles go back and forth. It's been a successful fall season. So if you can go out to any of the remaining games and support our student athletes, please do. And we always thank our partners, Haldane, for collaborating with us. A couple happenings in the district, just to remind everybody. I know Miss Emig and I are looking forward to the middle school dance on Friday. It's always a great time. I will drop by, I will not dance, I promise. I will embarrass everybody. Next week is our Deer Week. It's Drop Everything and Read week. Also our Spirit and Rock Book Fair. We have our Halloween parade on the 31st. That's always a treat. Last year it was like 82 degrees. I'm hoping we get a little bit cooler weather because some of these costumes are extraordinarily hot in that heat. But it's looking good so far for that week in the long range. Just a reminder, Election Day, there's no school for students, but we do have our Professional Learning Day, and schools are closed for Veterans Day. And before I conclude, I want to take a moment of privilege just to acknowledge, because you weren't here last meeting when we acknowledged Board Appreciation. So Sarah, thank you for your efforts. Dusty has a gift for you and your certificate. Peter, you're going to have to wait for your sweet treat when you get back in town, but we want to acknowledge you two for your contributions as a board member. And we'll have stuff ready for you when you come back in town. So that concludes my superintendent's report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do you have any questions? All right, thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and keep us moving. That brings us to our board communications presentations. We begin with our data presentation. All right. So Donald, I'm turning it over to you.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to go through some of our performance data from last school year, the 2024-2025 school year, and then there'll be time for some questions at the end. So just a little bit of an agenda for our presentation. We're going to take a brief look at our demographics as a school. We're going to look at our New York State assessment data, some other data collection that we do as a school and how we use it, and then also we'll conclude with some next steps and considerations, and after our analysis of the data, what it is that we're going to do moving forward and what some focus areas might be. So this is what we look like, our student body. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here except to make a little bit of a disclaimer that as we're looking at some of the performance data, you might notice some big swings in the bars that are a little misleading because of our small number of students that we have here at GUFS. And so you might notice a 5% shift here and there that could represent a single student. just based on the number of students that we have. So I point this out just so we're mindful of that as we're analyzing some of the performance data across the different grade levels. So this is a snapshot of our overall performance in math from grades 3 through 8. We had a 73% proficiency. And for ELA, 77% proficiency. And then for our grade 5 science exam, 81% proficiency. And just to get a sense of how many students opted out, so you know who's included in that data, that's included at the bottom as well. With a handful or less in a number of our grades, and then in grade 8 we had the largest number of opt-outs for ELA with 9 students that opted out, largely because of some of the challenges we had with CBT testing at the state level last year. So we're going to dive a little deeper into each one of those assessments. And so we'll start with math, and we're just going to do a regional comparison. So this is GUFS compared to our Lyric region, which includes Westchester, Putnam, and Rockland counties. And so that you'll see that we outperformed the Lyric region in every grade in mathematics, with the exception of grade 6. So we were 3% lower in our overall in our grade 6 proficiency as compared to our Lyric counterparts. This is still higher than the New York State grade 6 proficiency rate of 51%. And overall, our proficiency for mathematics was 73%, which is higher than our New York State proficiency rate of 55%. It's helpful to talk through year-over-year data as well, so that we can have some conversations about our curriculum. And so some things that I'd like to point out. Grade 8, you'll notice, is not included visually in this data just because many of our students take Algebra 1. And so there were only a very small number of students who actually took the grade 8 exam. So the visual would be a little bit misleading. Overall, our proficiency, if you look back to 2022, through last year's exam, there was a big increase from 60% to 73%. And then over the last couple of years, we've kind of hovered around that mid-70s marker in terms of our overall proficiency rate. And something I just wanted to note is that of the 25 students, which is 27%, that did not test proficient at a level 3 or 4, only 6 of those students are a level 1. And so there's a lot of potential for movement for our level 2 students, many of them very close to testing at proficiency. And another analysis we wanted to do with our math data, we'll do the same level of analyses for ELA as well, is a cohort analysis. And so you'll notice that this is the same group of students tracked over 3 years of assessment. So last year's 7th graders, you'll notice in the visual, that's our blue line. In 2024, there was a 35% proficiency in mathematics. We grew in 2025 to 67% proficiency in that with that particular cohort. That's a result of 6 students increasing a performance level and 2 students increasing 2 performance levels. Last year's 6th grade, in 2024, they had 84% proficiency, and last year, 57% proficiency. So it's definitely a dip that we're looking at. It's the difference of about 6 students testing as proficient. And we're going to talk through some next steps and some plans that we have to kind of look at this gap that we're noticing and the dip that we're noticing across a few different years of data in 6th grade. And some overall data for 3 to 8 in math that is not really visible in any of our analysis. is that we had 12 students increase 1 performance level in math across grades 3 to 8, and 2 students increase 2 performance levels. We're going to do, like I said, the same level of analysis for ELA. So you'll notice this is our regional comparison to the Lyric region. Again, that's Westchester, Putnam, and Rockland counties. We outperform that Lyric region in all grade levels for ELA. Our overall proficiency of 77% is higher than the New York State proficiency of 53% and the Lyric region of 60%. And something that we're incredibly proud of is that all 8th grade students that tested proficient in last year's data. So we had 100% proficiency in grade 8. When you look at our year-over-year comparison, we've had 73% proficiency in 2022 through our most current proficiency rate at 77%. And something to note, similar to what we noticed in math, of the 24 students, which represents 23%, who did not test proficient across grades 3 to 8, only 2 of those students are considered a level 1 in their testing, which means there's a lot of students considered a level 2, and many of them within reach of proficiency within a single school year. And we also have our cohort analysis, which you'll notice some trends. Like that blue line there is last year's grade 7. And so we had 44% proficiency in 2024. That increased to 67% proficiency in last year's data. And that was a result of 6 students increasing 1 performance level and 1 student increasing 2 performance levels. And overall, some data that was not visible in any of our analysis, 27 students increased 1 performance level and 2 students increased 2 performance levels, which is a true testament to a lot of the work that our incredible teachers are doing on a daily basis. And one additional data point that we wanted to take a look at is what you can consider comparable districts. I put comparable in quotes because no one is quite like Garrison. And so Dr. Stoll and I put our heads together to consider what we would list as comparable districts. And so even though we're not going to share any of those by name, we selected 12 other districts in the Hudson Valley that are relatively small, well-resourced, and relatively low need. And so when we drew that comparison, and you look at the math proficiency and ELA proficiency, we're just under the proficiency of comparable districts for math and for ELA, but really comparable, really close in ELA. We have our New York State grade 5 science exam. Our proficiency in 2024 was 63%. It was the first time that this exam was offered in the format that it was offered. And so our second at that, we had 81% proficiency, outperforming the Lyric region and New York State. And something that we wanted to note as well is not only are we outperforming, but our increase in proficiency, the rate at which we're achieving proficiency was also greater than New York State. We outpaced New York State in terms of our growth for grade 5 science. And so we increased by 18%, whereas New York State increased by 10% proficiency in grade 5 science. We also wanted to talk about our New York State Regents exams. So we accelerate many of our 8th grade students to take Algebra 1 in 8th grade, and all of our 8th grade students to take Living Environment. And so we broke this out in a way where we can not only just talk about passing, but also talk about mastery on these assessments. So New York State considers mastery 85 or higher, anything between 85 and 100. And so in the Algebra 1 exam, our pass rate last year was a 94%. Our mastery, students achieving between 85 and 100%, was 19%. So our passing rate is higher than the Lyric region, 94% as compared to 71. But our mastery rate is lower. So our mastery rate is at 19% as compared to our Lyric counterparts having a mastery rate of 23%. All of our 8th graders take living environment in 8th grade, and you can see that our mastery rate has, we have outperformed the Lyric region, and even though it's not listed here, the New York State mastery rate. And so the GUS pass rate was a 92% and mastery at 52%, where the Lyric region was 65% and 26% respectively. Included subgroup performance, just as an additional point to talk through. Many of our subgroups have a small number of students included in them. So we have to be mindful of that when we're analyzing the data, but definitely some things that we're looking at is how we're supporting, for instance, our students with disabilities and the rate at which they're achieving proficiency as compared to their general education counterparts. And so that breakdown is included in the presentation for both ELA and for math. And schools should recognize that we're more than just our assessment data. We're more than just the state tests that we receive annually. There's a lot of other assessment data that we collect, and there's other more qualitative data that we look at as well. And so just to draw attention to some of those things, we have what we would consider a well-balanced assessment system here in Garrison. And so we have our annual state tests, we have universal screeners, and our district and classroom assessments. And we just included here a bit of a snapshot of how we use this data. This is an actual spreadsheet that we kind of pull together and keep all of our data in one place to make really informed decisions about how we support students. And so we're not collecting data just to collect data, but to use it appropriately to support students in any way that we can. We have structured teams, and so we meet as a leadership team to look at data. We have an MTSS committee that analyzes this data and identifies tiered supports for students. And at all levels of the organization, we engage our teachers and our staff in data analysis in order to best support our students. And beyond the numbers, there's so many great things that we observe here on a daily basis, and some of the things that we really value are our alignment to the vision of a graduate. And some of those things are not as easily measured with numbers and data through an assessment, like the New York State assessment, but is just as valuable to us as we strive to educate the whole child here at Garrison. And so just wanted to bring that out and communicate that in our data presentation as well. As Dr. Stoll shared in his updates earlier, we have a lot of really wonderful things happening in terms of extracurricular activities, and this is data that we pay attention to as well. So we have our different sports programs in the fall and the winter and the spring. We have middle school band, middle school theater, our green team. We have multiple clubs, and lots of opportunities for students to get involved and enrich themselves outside of the classroom. So we're just going to talk through a couple of quick next steps and considerations after analyzing all of this data. So first, we identified grade 6 mathematics as an area that may need some attention. A middle school dip is common across New York State in terms of mathematics. And if you actually look at the number of standards in grade 6 mathematics, there's a large number of standards, a lot of content to cover. And so our next step is to revisit our curriculum map, specifically expressions and equations and ratios and proportions, or units that deal with those strands, primarily because in our reporting from New York State, it was indicated that those were our areas of challenge. And so we're going to engage in conversations about priority standards and strengthening our current curricular approach or materials, specifically in those areas. We're engaged in a fantastic MTSS process, but we're always looking to continuously improve. And so in partnership with Mrs. Emig and the rest of the MTSS committee, we're looking for ways to strengthen our MTSS process and the interventions that we offer at all levels in order to make sure that all students feel supported in their classes, whether that's in need of intervention or enrichment. And honestly, our size is our superpower in a lot of ways, in that anybody that you talk to in Garrison just has a deep knowledge of the students that we're working with, and lots of different ways to support that student, primarily because of how well they know them. And last but not least, one of the considerations for next steps will be our Regents mastery rates. And so our pass rates are fantastic. We're doing really well, and it's now a really good opportunity to shift the conversation, not only for passing the exam, but also demonstrating mastery according to New York State standards, so that we're able to speak to how we're setting students up for success in higher level courses across different content areas. And so this conversation may look different in biology as we shift from living environment to biology. But for Algebra 1, I definitely think that we're ready to do some backwards planning to identify how is it that we can start at mastery, backwards plan, in order to get students where they need to be to demonstrate that mastery by the end of the school year. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you. All right, does anybody have any questions?
We gotta get a few hard ones. First
All right.
presentation.
I mean, I will thank you. I think you did address some of my questions and notes that I wrote down here, such as 6th grade mapping and looking at how we can elevate that. One question that has come up, I think in some of our other discussions, and I know looking at those algebra mastery rates, they're not very high, but we did really successfully move to living environment for all. Is there a way we can start looking at, knowing that algebra is so important to how it affects your high school career, basically, looking at opening that up and making it algebra optional for all, especially as the regions are really going away in high school as a mechanism. So you could take algebra, but not, and if you're not feeling comfortable with the material, maybe not take the region at the end, but at least start building those skills for high school. Is there a way we can start working that into the conversation, perhaps, going forward?
I definitely think that there are ways that we can work it into the conversation, but I would just want to make sure that we're doing it in the right way. I think there are a lot of districts that will offer Algebra 1 to all of their students without some of the necessary preparation that is required to do it really well. And so that would come, right now we're mapping curriculum. So once we have a sense of our mapped curriculum across different grade levels, we can then have a conversation around how we can set students up for success in Algebra 1. Because what a lot of people probably don't realize, if they're not as familiar with the standards, is that if we replace a Math 8 course with Algebra 1, there's certain geometry standards in Math 8 that would not get covered in an Algebra 1 course. And so many students in other districts that skip Math 8 entirely then get to geometry in high school and don't necessarily have the geometric foundation to be successful in higher level math courses. So really, it's a matter of proper planning and curriculum mapping to make sure that we're not accelerating students to then have to decelerate them when they get to high school to be successful. And so it might be conversations around how we curriculum map over the course of middle school in its entirety and start to consolidate certain standards across the courses to make sure that by the time students get to 8th grade, they're fully prepared and can cover the content necessary to achieve mastery. But it's definitely a multi-year goal, but it's definitely possible.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions?
So this
Go for
is
it.
a little bit cliche, but you look at the numbers, like in the high level English scores, the female cohort seems to do better. The high level math scores, the male cohort seems to do better. Is there an explanation for that? Is that a typical pattern? Like I'm talking the 4s and 5 for the highest level scores. Is that something that's typical, or is it special to this district? I'm just curious. Because you always read you read these, the boys do better in math, girls are better with language in certain pages. I don't know if is that something that is typical?
Not that I've seen. I haven't noticed that same trend at like a New York State level, but I can look into it.
I'm just looking at the numbers, Ken. I'm not sure how much that holds true for us because our students represent such a large.
Yeah, it's a small I just didn't know if there was
Yeah.
something to that. No.
We've looked at that though in the past. I remember years ago that was definitely a trend that we were looking at because there was a big shift in some of the, especially when they hit middle school.
And so based on what you showed tonight, I don't see that in the female disaggregation.
It's really like the level 3 to 4 numbers, which again are very small, so probably just take it with a grain of salt. But I just was curious about if there's something happens generally or doesn't.
Any other question? Okay. Thank you so much for the presentation. I really appreciate it. All right, that brings us, moving on board communications to our report on NYSBA resolutions voting. All right, Eric, you're up. I can't wait for this.
Oh, buckle up. Well, it was, I was happy to represent our district. I did speak up on one issue, but it was, overall, it was a good reminder of how big and how much diversity of thought and socioeconomics exists in New York State. It was very telling. Despite that, I think there were two consistent and unifying themes that are both rather unfortunate. They seem to be apathy and a somewhat distrust of authority, and this is largely among people who spoke up during the voting. There was a lot of pushback in terms of the amount of time that boards get to review this material. Unlike us, there are some boards in more rural areas where they might only meet once a month, and so therefore they received this information about the resolutions, didn't have enough time to really digest it, really explore it, and in some cases didn't even really know what they were voting on, and that's not their fault. So that was a really sort of telling thing. The other thing was, so discussions were time limited, as they should be, but whenever someone didn't get a chance to speak and a vote was raised to extend debate, it was voted down every single time, which was really unfortunate. There was a lot of misinformation in some of the discussions. An example being issue 17. This is just a minor one, but this is one of those resolutions that just seemingly is just kind of, well, whatever, let's just vote on it, right? And it was about whether or not schools can serve full-fat milk in cafeterias. But a lot of delegates who spoke up chalked this one up to being influenced by the state dairy lobby, for example. So there was a lot of really kind of interesting conversations, and ultimately every resolution passed, even if NYSBA recommended opposing. There was only one exception to that, which was on reducing the number of lockdown drills from 4 to 2. That one failed, but it was close. But everything else sailed through by a wide margin. So there is a survey that I can fill out by Friday, which I'm happy to do. But I would like to just sort of open it up to the rest of the board about just how candid I can or should be on this. We could also discuss it offline, but I think it was I do think that this was a really important exercise, getting all of these boards together from across the state. It seemed fairly performative to me before I experienced it, but then I realized how important it is. And I do think that some of those rural areas that don't meet as often as we do, or some districts closer to the city do, that they just didn't really get the time to think about some of these things. And I think it would have made for some probably better votes rather than people just clicking yes, clicking yes, clicking yes. So again, I'm happy to share my thoughts. I can, dial it back a little bit, or take the handbrake fully off. But it's, I didn't want to fill out the survey without opening that up to the rest of the board first. So that's the report.
Thank you. Do I have questions for Eric or thoughts on the survey? All right, I'm going to jump in here and say I'm comfortable with you, seeing as you dedicated the time and energy to attend, which I really appreciate. I know this is not fun to everyone who's done it before. I think you should fill it out and share your thoughts, especially if there's a way to improve process and make it more valuable to everybody.
Yeah, happy to do it.
All right, looks like everyone's in agreement on that. Thank you. You have done your service. If you don't wish to repeat it, we will throw someone else under the bus next year.
Well, you can do it from home, so, and you don't have to be on camera, so whatever, if you need to crack a beer during it, I'll do that for next year. So.
Okay, thank you. All right, that brings us to item C, which is the discussion of athletic placement process. So I'm going to set the stage for this. Greg, if you want to speak up, let me know. What we have here tonight is a discussion about the Garrison process and policy, and then a proposed resolution for this. What we had talked about with Greg, Dan and I, about approaching this as on a student-by-student basis. Once we have agreement from one of our partner high schools that they are willing to open this up, in this case, Haldane had a discussion last night. Greg had spoke with or communicated with the superintendent there. They're willing to support it. The questions we had, or at least Dan and I had, were on transportation, which, as you will see in the resolution, we can ask the parent to provide, so there's no added cost to this to the district. About us having a policy overall, that is something we could look at, but in the interest of meeting the deadlines, because winter sports start and tryouts start, that is something we could look at down the road perhaps if we wanted to open this up further. Again, it would be in consultation with our partner high schools. So it would be up to them on a student by student basis, really, and team by team, because it's different for every sport. So that's really where we're at. Did I hit all the high notes?
Yeah, if I can just go even higher and pan out a little bit. So just so everybody knows, the athletic placement process, all districts with high schools have this, and it's really for student athletes, not to fill roster spots, not to move kids up, but exceptional athletes that for readiness and for competition are not challenged at the modified level. So a lot of districts have a policy, and what the New York State Regents has said is that there are some districts out there, we're one of them, that are K through 8 districts, and that not to help out another district, not to fill positions, provide additional experience, not to, if you don't offer a modified, to let kids play up. That's not what it's for. It's really it's really aimed at a select students who can benefit from such a placement because of their level of readiness. So you don't have a lot of athletes that this happens. So the idea of us having an APP policy is typically reserved for if you had a bigger K through 8 district and a lot of athletes that would come through, or you're a high school. So I think this resolution is presented to allow this particular student the opportunity to try out and play up given their readiness and their skill level, and this allows us to engage that. Our partners at Haldane are willing to, on this one particular case, allow this to happen, and it takes action by both boards of education. So that's high level.
Greg did reach out to Section 1, which governs all the sports for our area. And O'Neill, just to point out, is a different section. They're Section 9, I believe. So that way, if we ever had a similar situation, with O'Neill, we would need to go to section 9, but section 1, Greg spoke with, and they were
Yep.
on board with this as well, supporting it. And the only other thing I'll bring up is that, I know, Kate, you're probably aware of this, but if you start playing, it's only varsity,
Yeah.
right, Greg? If you play on varsity and then you switch schools, you lose a year of eligibility. So we want to be very clear with our families that if you play on a high school team but then select another high school because we have multiple options, you will be forced to sit out a season. So just making sure we're clear on that, and things like transportation as well, I thought were key. Do I have any questions for Greg on this? Yeah, go for it.
have just a couple comments. I think it's good that we're doing this, but I do think we should think, in the long term about making sure that we have the necessary policies and processes so we don't reinvent the wheel like every single time this comes up. It's probably not going to come up a lot, but it'd be nice to have maybe like a FAQ for parents that has the transportation thing, the eligibility thing, just something at the ready so our administration isn't burdened too much with having to kind of go through this process that deeply. There's kind of like a playbook there. And if we need a policy in the policy, documents, I guess that's another question. But I was also thinking just about the processes. Is this like something we can just have at the ready, if a parent has a question about it?
I would put it on the list for the policy committee to discuss it.
Okay.
I would look at also, because they have to play under the policy, just how that works, because if we have a policy but they have to play under the policy that exists over at the partnering high schools, what's in
There could be a policy on our procedure.
procedure,
We
yes.
have to be class. So it's very clear.
And like I said, this is not gonna happen often, because that's not what this is for. This is not a kid that wants to, it's really about readiness and competition level, and that's really what the law was set for, and as well as the APP processes. It's not to fill out rosters or, get kids, involved in sports because you don't offer something. Like if you don't offer something, it's not, well, my kid's gonna go play up at this school and I wanna do it. It's really for exceptional athletes, that it really doesn't do them a service if they're playing at the modified level.
All right, do I have any other, before I read this resolution that was provided by council, do I have any other questions, comments on this? I know this is something new for us, so. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and move forward. Request for approval to permit middle school student to participate in interscholastic sports with Haldane Central School District. Whereas regulations of the Commissioner of Education permit students in grades 7 and 8 to participate on a high school team in the receiving district for which the child intends to enroll for grades 9 through 12, provided certain qualifications are met. And whereas the Garrison Union Free School District has identified an 8th grade student that is eligible to play sports at the high school level, and the district desires to approve such participation. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby permits student 17410 to participate in interscholastic athletics at Haldane Central School District through the athletic placement process, with the understanding that Haldane has been identified as the high school of attendance for such student, and with transportation to be provided by the parent guardian to from Haldane schools. And be it further resolved that administration of Haldane Central School District shall be responsible for providing approval for the identified student to begin the eligibility process, including the administration of any evaluations and or physicals, and the Haldane Central School District Medical Director shall be responsible for the approval of the student to engage the athletic placement process either independently or upon or upon consultation with the district's medical director on an as-needed basis. This resolution shall be effective immediately and shall apply to this particular student for the 2025-2026 school year. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. And we'll just clarify that for the 8th graders, we do have a rate for them to attend Haldane. Part of the reason this doesn't apply to 7th graders, at this point we wouldn't have a rate for them to attend yet either. So I find that to be an important distinction. All right, I'm going to go ahead, if there's no further comment or question, and move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Abstentions? All right. Moving on to public comment. Public comment is intended for members of the community to speak openly and voice concerns in accordance with policy 1510 of the Garrison Union Free School District. Any person wishing to speak shall comply with all provisions of this policy. Comments about specific school personnel or individual students is a violation of board policy. Concerns regarding students or personnel should be discussed privately with the superintendent or appropriate administrator. Comments should be limited to 3 minutes, and speakers are asked to conduct themselves in a respectful manner. The board will listen to comments but will not engage in dialogue. Any necessary follow-up will be noted and provided through the appropriate channel. Members of the public wishing to comment during board meetings are asked to place their name and town of residence on the sign-in sheet. Commenters will be invited to the podium to address the board. I don't have anyone signed up. If anyone wishes to... All right, I'm going to go ahead and move on. Acceptance of minutes. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District does hereby accept the minutes of the regular business meeting of October 8th, 2025 as presented. May I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Okay. Do I have any questions on the minutes as presented, please? All right, all in favor? Please say aye.
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 Nays? Abstentions? Financial reports. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby accepts the Treasurer's Report for September 2025 and the Claims Audit Report for September 2025 as presented. May I have a motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Do I have any questions on the reports as presented? Do you have anything really exciting you want to tell us about these reports?
No, they're pretty standard
Okay.
reports this month.
All right, we'll go ahead and move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Nays? Abstentions? All right. Move on to committee reports. We have the Facilities Committee report. Eric, it's over to you.
All right, so the Facilities Committee met on October 17th, which included 2 very knowledgeable members of the school community, which was great. We started with Joe providing an update on capital projects in progress, including roof repair, old part of the building, gym roof repair, and electric water heater installation. Then next came a review of the issues and costs associated with 2025 projects to come, such as the front stairway replacement, roofing above the principal's office, abatement and gutter work. And then we started to look farther ahead to 2026 and beyond. The projects range from small, such as such as curbing and pointing on retaining walls, to medium, such as work on the original 1908 entrance, to large, such as the flat roof replacement on the middle and elementary schools. And we did talk about the outdoor classroom as well. Group we then toured the interior and exterior of the building to take a look at some issues, and then everybody reconvened to prioritize projects, and the group came to an alignment on the next set of priorities, which is namely redoing the historic front original entrance, refreshing the quote for the pre-K to second grade playground ahead of the discussion with GSA, and then getting some updated budgetary and pricing for roofing yet to be completed, and also replacement of septic tank in front of the building. So the likely items to propose for next year's budget, though not yet set in stone, are the front entrance, the playground as mentioned, and potentially the septic tank. But Joe and his team will evaluate some other patchwork on the middle school roof the next time we have some significant rainfall, and we'll see if that changes now. We approach the priorities. Joe, miss anything?
No, pretty good.
Thank you.
Was last night's rainfall enough, or do you need more significant?
It was enough to give an indication. There's still probably some more patching to be done.
Thank you. Do you have any questions for Eric on the facilities report? All right. Thank you, Eric. That's great.
Thank you.
Moving on to policy readings. First, we have a second reading and approval of policy 7350, timeout and physical restraints. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District, upon the recommendation of Jennifer Harrington Wilson, Policy Committee Chair, hereby approves and adopts policy 7350, timeout and physical restraints as presented. May I have a motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Jen, do you have any further comments on this?
No,
Any second?
discuss it last meeting.
Great, okay. Go ahead and move to a vote then, unless anyone has further comment. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Nays, abstentions. Moving on to the consent agenda. Be it resolved, Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, does hereby approve the items of the personnel consent agenda as presented. May I have a motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Any reason you wish to speak to?
Yeah, there's a
Great.
couple, if you don't mind me just highlighting. I just want to welcome back Coach Pete for the girls modified basketball and Coach Van as boys modified basketball for this season. So they're on this agenda for recommendation. I also want to acknowledge a couple of other folks on this. Number one, we have a resignation of a certified per diem sub, Mark Skinner. He's been with us for quite some time. He's done an incredible job. And you always hate to see really good people go, but at the same time, he's moving forward in his career, getting an actual teaching position. And we just want to, thank Mark Skinner for all his care and commitment he had to our district. And we want to wish him well as he, really starts his career as an educator. So thank you, Mark, and we appreciate all you've done for our kiddos here. The other thing is, you don't get to see him often because he comes to it after the teachers are pretty much gone and after the students are gone. But we hired Ed Trimble as an evening custodial worker and groundskeeper around this time last year, and he has successfully completed his probationary period. Ed comes, always ready to work. He's always here. Whatever you ask him to do, he'll do. He takes very much pride in his work, loves being part of the team, and we just want to congratulate Ed on going through his probationary period. It's hard to find custodial workers, particularly those that work late into the evening, and to find somebody that cares so much about the work that he does and how much it means to the kids and the staff. I just want to, number one, congratulate him and thank Mike O'Neill for all of his work that he did onboarding Ed. And lastly, I want to alert the board that another thing that's hard to find is substitute nurses. Our nurse Melissa, is one of them. She deals with health and safety and sometimes life and death situations. We have one sub-nurse that we can call on and not always available at all times. So one of the things that we have for this evening for consideration is a contract. Yes, it's been looked over by our attorneys. A contract to have an outside agency that in the event that Nurse Melissa, she's here all the time, but things can happen and we need a nurse on site. There's a contract here for the board's consideration so that we can ensure the safety and health and wellness of our students without worrying about an event happening that we're not prepared to handle. So that's also on this agenda for this evening.
Thank you. Do I have any questions or comments regarding the consent agenda? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstentions. That brings us to new business. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, hereby approves the new business items as presented. May I have a motion, please?
Motion.
Second.
Thank you. We touched on the nurse, and then we have budget transfers. If anyone has any questions, or Joe, is there anything really exciting about the budget transfers you want to share?
Well, what I would say is the biggest budget transfer is basically we had a contingent placement for a special education student, and we did use it, but the student goes to BOCES, that's why it had to be transferred over to the BOCES code. The other one is just positioning some salaries and adjusting them based upon the people that we actually hired.
Do I have any questions regarding the budget transfers or any of the other new business? I'm going to go ahead and move to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstentions. That brings us to the second public comment section of this evening. I'm not going to read the whole paragraph again. And Seeing as there's no one here from the public, I'm gonna go ahead and close the second public comment section of the evening and move on to board member comment. Jocelyn. Where?
Real quick, three things. First, just a big thanks to the facilities committee, particularly Joe. I know it's a lot to put together, so really appreciate that. To the other board members who participated, and also to the really knowledgeable members of the community. I thought it was a really good meeting. Pete, I'm going to steal your thunder just a little bit. I just wanted to say well done to you, and thanks to everyone who participated in the outdoor classroom discussion. It was a long way to go, but it just was one of those really good examples of a community. It's teachers, it's administrators all coming together and knowing they want to work together to achieve something special. So really well done, Pete. And then just along those lines, for the discussion of opening the doors for the student athlete, I just think, again, great example of school districts working together for the kids' benefit. So I hope that this is one example that we can carry forward, that we can reciprocate to those other districts as well. So yeah, just all good vibes, all good.
Thank you. Jen?
I just wanted to thank Mr. McDonald for a great presentation tonight. I thought not only the way you shared the data, but the graphics that you provided made it easy to follow along and understand. And I particularly appreciated that there was 12 other schools to give us an idea of how we compare to similar schools, not just the entire region. So I know that's a lot of work, and I really appreciate the presentation.
Thank you. Peter?
No comment. Eric said what I was gonna say. So.
Sorry. You're in St. Louis, sorry.
All right, thank you, Peter. Ken?
No comment.
All right, that brings me to me. Seeing as I wasn't here at the last meeting, I did attend Southern Westchester Putnam School Board Association Board of Directors in-person retreat at the end of September. And it was the first time there were all 16 districts who sit on the board were represented in person, like around the table. And it was really interesting, like you said, to hear from some of the other districts on their perspective of what's happening. One thing that resonated that I wanted to bring back was some of the other districts mentioned how they're struggling for volunteers at the PTA level, in the schools, at the board level. And every district's response was, you are too. I thought I was the only one. So it really sort of shows the importance of those communal conversations, that if we just sort of stay at our own little silo, we don't hear from everyone, and a lot of us are having similar experiences. There was no solutions that we came up with. I know this is one of our board goals, is to really increase and listen to the community on how we can make service more acceptable. But accessible, that was something I wanted to bring back here, because it was really interesting that everyone sort of had this aha moment of like, oh, we thought it was just our district. Otherwise, that was a great meeting. And also, I had the privilege of sitting on the environmental education planning, I don't know if it's task force committee, whatever you want to call it, thanks to the planning committee sending me there, and it was really interesting. It was led by Mr. McDonald, and our environmental education teacher was there. It was talking about that 5-year educational plan, which I know we're going to hear a lot more about. I'm not usually the person you send to that. I usually do a lot more like the budget finance stuff, so I was more black and white in the room of like, well, what's this going to cost, what's happening? And it was lovely to see community members, parents, teachers all come together and share really creative ideas. It really changed sort of my thinking of what that process is. So thank you to our administrative team and to our teachers for putting in the time and effort on that. I was really impressed. So that's all I have. 1 minute before 8, I feel really good about this. We do not have a need to go to exec session this evening, so.
Broken the record.
What?
You might have broken the record.
No, I don't think so.
No, we've been faster before. Be resolved, the Board of Education of the Garrison Union Free School District hereby adjourns the regular meeting of October 22nd, 2025. May I have a motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Nays, abstentions. All right, we did it right before it turned to 8:01. Yay! But not earlier. I feel like we've been faster.